Okay, we are live. Hello, welcome back to a brand new episode of Cinema Savvy News. And yeah, I'm flying solo on this one tonight, guys. Unfortunately, I can't be joined by George Aldridge or Tate Niawa. So yeah, I'm going to be your host for today's movie news, and we're actually going to be dropping a few segments from tonight's show. So don't expect to see the box office breakdown or trailer talk. George is the numbers guy. He actually usually formulates all the plans for these live shows that we do. But he fortunately couldn't be on tonight. So this has kind of been a rush job tonight, but nevertheless, the show must go on. I've thrown together a plan of all this week in movie news, and that's literally just going to be what we're going to keep it to tonight. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. So unfortunately, as is often the case with these shows, when we have to start off, I have to start off with a bit of bad news. So Toby Hooper, director, died at the age of 74. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know who Toby Hooper is, he is one of the pioneers of the horror film genre. He's most famous for directing the 1974, I believe it was, version of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, which still to this day is one of the most disturbing, macabre, and hard-hitting horror films I think I've ever seen. It was done on a really small budget. I think it was like $300,000. And I mean, I think it made over like 3 million or something like that. It made a huge amount of money based on its budget. Also directed other films such as Night of the Living Dead, the 1968 film. 1972's The Last House on the Left, as well as 1975's film Shivers. And also, fairly controversially as well, Poltergeist from 1982. Spielberg produced that movie and came up with a story of it, and there's a lot of conflicting reports out there that maybe Spielberg kind of directed the film over Toby Hooper's shoulders. Nevertheless, Toby Hooper was a fantastic director, and I went to a Comic-Con about a month ago, and he appeared there. He was doing signings there, and unfortunately, I didn't get the time to get anything signed from him. But I mean, within those few weeks, he's gone. Like, I didn't actually look at what he died of, so apologies about that. So I don't know if he knew he was going, if it was very sudden. But it's been a huge hit the last couple of weeks, or the last couple of months, I should say, for the horror genre, because we had Romero died, director of the original Night of the Living Dead. So yeah, it's been a hard-hitting month for the horror genre, really. But it's sad to see him go. It leaves a tremendous legacy behind him. But we have to move it. Oh, these segues are always difficult to do, but we move into the week in movie news now. Kicking off with Blade Runner 2049. A lot has been going on with this movie. We have some more information come out today, I believe it was, or yesterday. We have an official running time for the film. The film will clock in at around 2 hours, 32 minutes, minus credits. With credits, you're looking closer at 165 minutes. So I think that's about half hour longer than the original Blade Runner. I know it depends on which cut you see. The final cut, I think, probably clocks in around 2 hours, maybe just a little bit over. So this is going to be considerably longer. And to go alongside that with other Blade Runner news, fairly out of nowhere, they released a prequel film titled 2036 Nexus Dawn, which is going to be the first part in a sort of mini trilogy of prequel films set in between the original Blade Runner, and it's going to lead up to the events and the situation that we're going to find Blade Runner in with 2049. I can't really comment much on this film because I haven't seen it yet. I do plan to do a reaction video to I do plan to do a reaction video to it. It's about a 6.5 to 7 minute film. And as I said, it's going to sort of like bridge the gap between the two movies. It reminds me a little bit of the approach that Ridley Scott took with Prometheus. You know, the original Prometheus film, you had that Guy Ritchie prologue almost, and he did the same with Alien Covenant as well. It's kind of reminding me a bit about that. I'm sure the information is going to be in the film itself, Blade Runner 2049, this October, because it would be very weird if this has some key information to it. My guesses are it's going to be showing the Jared Leto character and his company, his corporation, and maybe just the fallout of what happened to the first city. Is it still there? How was the technology adapted? Is it about the search for Deckard? I don't know. Maybe you guys can tell me. You guys may have seen 2036 Nexus Dawn. But as I said, I will be watching it this weekend, and I will have a reaction out for that within the next few days. Moving away from Blade Runner now, we move to the world of DC. I don't think we can ever go a week without talking about superhero films. This is to do with the recently confirmed Joker origin film, and this is only sort of hearsay and reports at the moment, so don't take this as gospel, but it's been circulating around that the film, the Joker origin film, are reportedly set to focus on a young, bullied kid version of the Cloud Prince of Crime. This is according to MMA fighter Brendan Schaub on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. His agent, Todd Feldman, represents the director of the upcoming Joker origin film, Todd Phillips, who said, quote, "It's dark. It's like a dark Joker. As a kid, he had a permanent smile and everyone made fun of him. It's like on the streets of Brooklyn. It's super dark and real." So I think the buzzword for today, ladies and gentlemen, is dark. Unsurprising there. That's kind of the tone that DC have always stuck with their movies, and it makes sense to do that for the Joker. Once again, we reported on this last week, but this is going to be completely separate from the Jared Leto and Harley Quinn film, or even just Jared Leto's incarnation of the Joker. This is going to be an entirely separate thing. Martin Scorsese is set to produce this one. My opinion on it being set on a young bullied kid version of the Joker, though. I mentioned this last week when I was giving my thoughts on the idea of an origin film for the Joker in and of itself. I think it's kind of pointless for the Joker. I know that you've got The Killing Joke, for example, which is probably one of the most well-respected Batman Joker graphic novels of all time. Quite rightly so. It's fantastic. But I think you take away a lot of the mystery with the character if you delve too much into his backstory. And if they do sort of like a young, bullied, misunderstood kid, I'm getting like Rob Zombie flashbacks here with the Halloween film, for example, that came out. And if you go too much in detail into like a criminal's past or a villain's past, I think you can take away a lot of the shine of it. And what makes the Joker scary is his unpredictability. And if we get sort of like a catalyst for that propelled him to that lifestyle, I think it might cheapen the film a little bit, or the character. It will definitely cheapen the character. But it ultimately depends on how it's carried across, how it's put together, the script, the acting. They're all going to be the main things. So on paper, this could sound kind of iffy to me. When I see the final product, this could be incredible. And as I said, these are only reports at the minute. As I said, like, you've got an MMA fighter who was on a podcast whose agent represents the director of the film. It seems like it might be like Chinese whispers or something like that. I don't think anything's set in stone right now because they've only just announced it. This hasn't gone into production or anything like that just yet. So expect that to change probably along the lines as it gets closer to the release date. Sticking with DC now, and our main news for today, Suicide Squad 2 has been delayed and probably won't go into production until around fall of 2018 at the earliest. When they announced that they were going to do a Joker and Harley Quinn movie with Jared Leto's Joker and Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, I think reports were coming in that, DC and Warner Brothers really wanted to fast track a sequel as quickly as possible to Suicide Squad, because although it was very mixed critically, I think it did very well on home video. And there are some very hardcore fans out there. Look at any cosplayer in a Daddy's Little Monster shirt, or the Jared Leto Joker grills or the tattoos, whatever it happens to be. I know it has an audience, and you can tell that Warner Brothers definitely do want to cash in on that because the merchandise was huge for that film. But due to Will Smith's busy schedule, I mean, he's going to be playing the genie in Disney's live-action Aladdin, and he also has an upcoming sci-fi film called Gemini Man. It's just not on his schedule to physically come back and play Deadshot until he's got those two projects out of the way. So they're looking at a tentative production start of late 2018, more than likely probably 2019. So don't expect this film out until around late 2019, but more than likely 2020. So if you're a Suicide Squad fan, apologies about that. I'm sure you're going to have a bunch of other DC movies in between then, though, and I'm sure you can go back and enjoy the first Suicide Squad film if that indeed was your thing. It wasn't my thing, so the fact that this film has been delayed indefinitely isn't really a problem to me. Again, sticking with DC, DC's character of Shazam has finally begun pre-production. David F. Sandberg, who's the director, has confirmed on Instagram that work has now officially begun. There's no casting announcements as of yet, but it's expected to have a tentative release date of 2019. Shazam's a character that I really don't know a whole lot about. I pretty much know the surface level stuff of the character, that he's kind of a kid, think he's a kid who plays baseball, and when he yells Shazam, a lightning bolt comes down and he turns into a superhero that pretty much has exactly the same powers as Superman. I'm sure there's going to be an angry DC fanboy out there that's going to say he has completely different powers, but this is basically all I know from playing the game of Injustice, because Shazam's a playable character with that. I mean, there's really nothing else to comment on. There was an Instagram post by the director, and it was a blank wall. It was like a white blank wall with a desk, and he's saying that every time, like, he's planning something, or each day of production, he's going to have a Coke can, and he's like updating it daily or every other day with how many Coke cans are now building up on that desk against the wall, which is pretty fun. But as I said, like Black Adam, for example, the villain, Shazam's pretty much major villain. It's like Shazam's Joker, essentially, or Shazam's Green Goblin. Like, he is the main head honcho. Of course, he's going to be played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. That was confirmed like a couple of years ago, I believe. Is not going to appear in this movie. They're going to give Black Adam his own film. Seems to be the current trend at the minute, with Sony, for example, wanting to do a Venom spin-off. They want to do spin-offs focused solely on the villain. Not really sure how they're going to turn out, but it seems like DC want to do exactly the same, and Black Adam won't feature in the Shazam movie. I don't know any other villains of Shazam, so I don't know like any other plot lines they could go with. This is really early days for this film. As I said, it's literally just started pre-production, so I guess check back for more details. As we hear more, we will report on it. And our final bit of DC news for today is that Joss Whedon has been given an official writing credit for the upcoming Justice League film. This is due to him being involved in heavy reshoots for the film, directing it, penning the script for it. However, Zack Snyder still remains as the only credited director on the film. This shows to me that maybe Joss Whedon has watched the project, and there's been reports as well. And again, they're only reports. These aren't the thoughts of myself, before anyone kicks off in the comments, that the film is a mess. It's unwatchable, I believe they were quoted on saying about the film, or at least one report came out that it was unwatchable. So this strikes me, if he's got an official writing credit, he's got to have hit some kind of quota or percentage on what's allowed to get you a credit. It's kind of reminding me of the directing quota of Superman 2, the Richard Donner film, and then it passed to Lasseter. Lasseter's not the right word. Right name, sorry, that is to do with Pixar. What's the name of the director who did Superman 2? I swear it begins with L. I can't remember. We're doing this live, folks. But yeah, basically, Donner filmed so much of that film, and then it passed to a different director. And then he had to refilm so much of it so that he could get his name attached as a director. I'm guessing that has to be the same for a writer as well. So that strikes me that the level of rewrites and reshoots in this film have been incredibly substantial. This sounds like plot stuff. This sounds like them taking things in a different direction. It might be character scenes. I really don't know. And it'll be an interesting experiment, actually, when this movie rolls around and I see it for the first time, if you will be able to tell which parts were written by Snyder and directed by Snyder, which parts were done by Joss Whedon. Will there be a massive tonal shift? I really don't know. It's going to be really interesting, but I really hope it's not a hodgepodge of the film. And maybe, just maybe, Joss Whedon maybe of how be able to save this movie and put his own spin on it, maybe make it flow better, maybe get it to a better focus for the characters, maybe give them more time to shine, show more personality. I really don't know the level that he's worked on in this film, but if he's got a writing credit on this film, then I've got to assume that it's a lot. So we're moving away from that now. And as I said, I have kind of rushed this plan together like minutes before I hit live. So apologies if the news articles don't flow all that well. But filming has now begun for Martin Scorsese's upcoming film, The Irishman. This is his film starring Joe Pesci, which I believe brought him out of retirement, actually. It's also starring Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. And I think that it's going to be screened on Netflix next year. Or it might just be on Netflix. I didn't really read too much into that. But more Martin Scorsese, you know, he is a fantastic director. He's one of the best. And that cast alone, I'm sold. I could see no trailers and I would watch that movie just based purely on the cast. And to see Joe Pesci come back as well, kind of reuniting at least 2/3 of the cast from Casino or Goodfellas. So yeah, I can't wait for that movie. Yeah, bring it on. Next one, as I say, there's no flow to this at all. Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder are set to reunite on the big screen for the third time in their careers for an upcoming romantic comedy called Destination Wedding. They featured in 2 previous films before, including Bram Stoker's Dracula and Richard Linklater's A Scanner Darkly. I've seen Bram Stoker's Dracula. I haven't seen A Scanner Darkly, although I have heard of it. This film, Destination Wedding, is going to tell the story of a mismatched couple who find themselves brought together at multiple weddings. I love Winona Ryder. I love Keanu Reeves. I'm not a big one for romantic comedies, though. It really has to depend on the romantic comedy. For example, I love stuff like When Harry Met Sally. That's probably my favorite. 500 Days of Summer, if you can count that as a comedy. That's a particularly depressing film towards the end. I'm even partial to things like Along Came Polly. I do like that movie, so there are a few out there that I can watch. But if I do go and see this movie at all, I'm not sure if I will. But that cast, Keanu Reeves, I mean, he can do action. By God, can he do action? Watch either Point Break or, of course, John Wick or The Matrix. He could do comedy as well, though. Bill and Ted. And, oh, God, didn't he do a movie with Eli Roth? I didn't see that movie. I don't know how good that movie was, but he looked hilarious in the trailer. And Winona Ryder. God, I love the woman. Stranger Things, Edward Scissorhands, Heathers. So many good roles. So it'll be interesting to see their dynamic together, especially because they have worked together before. I'm sure that's going to come through when in the film of Destination Wedding. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Chris McKenna and Eric Summers, who are 2 of the 6 credited writers on Spider-Man Homecoming, are reportedly in talks to be returning to pen the script for the sequel. John Watts is likely to return to direct also, but there's no confirmation yet. This doesn't strike me as untoward at all. I mean, Spider-Man Homecoming was a moderate success. Well, I guess it was a success. I guess I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. I don't know if it was as big a success as they anticipated, but, you know, Marvel and Sony especially, are going to be one that fast-tracking this thing for more sequels. Sony have always wanted to set up a cinematic universe for the Spider-Man character. We saw this with Amazing Spider-Man 2, where they were really pushing that thing. They wanted to do a Sinister Six movie. You know, they wanted to do all these spin-offs. They wanted to do a Black Cat spin-off, and I think they're still in talks with that. There's Silver Sable, Black Cat. They're doing the Venom spin-off. But they're definitely going to want to push the Spider-Man movies as well. And that looks like what they're doing. And if they were happy with the creative team that was behind Spider-Man Homecoming, then it makes sense that they'll keep everyone on board. In terms of Spider-Man's previous track record, they at least keep their directors on for 2 movies with like Mark Webb and, of course, Sam Raimi did the first 3 Spider-Man films. I hated Spider-Man Homecoming. You can watch our review for that on the channel. So I'm not really excited about this, and I would kind of like to see a different team behind it. But it's the Marvel machine, isn't it? I guess it's the Sony and the Marvel machine. They craft the movie, and then the director basically has to make their movie. I'm not sure if that's exactly how it goes, but it seemed like a film made by committee, Spider-Man Homecoming, and that's, I guess, all I can say on that. Warner Brothers is producing a new Lord of the Flies movie. Now, this is actually kind of hilarious because when George messaged me here, well, actually, I should say that Warner Brothers are producing a new Lord of the Flies movie with an all-female cast. When George first saw this news, he messaged in the chat that he thought it read Warner Brothers are producing a new Lord of the Rings movie with an all-female cast. I guess get commenting below on which female actors you would like to see play all the characters from Lord of the Rings. I think George said Amy Schumer would play Gimli, so there's one to start you off. So Scott McGehee and Dan Seigel will be writing and directing the movie. In all honesty, I've never heard of them. Apparently, they've directed such films as What Maisie Knew and Bee Season. I haven't seen either of those films, so I really don't know what their work's like. However, I do know what Lord of the Flies is. William Golding's novel. It's pretty much required reading for most schools. And I don't know if we did it at school, but I have it on my bookshelf there. I've read it numerous times. It's a fantastic story. I haven't seen the old films, though. So I might give those a watch to see how they hold up. but the book is one of the most sort of like hard hitting and really just like, it's a great idea for a book, for example, great idea for a story. And of course, when that book was written, and all the films that have ensued that have followed the book, it's an all-male cast. It's essentially, for anyone who doesn't know what the story of Lord of the Flies is, it's a plane crash on an island. I believe it was a school trip full of schoolboys, and then they sort of become, they have to try and make their own civilization. They're away from adults. They establish a hierarchy. You've got the main leader. You've got the slightly overweight kid called Piggy, and they all call him Piggy. And he's kind of the very sympathetic character throughout the story. And it's really just fascinating to watch this civilization be created out of these school kids. This really like native kind of society, this culture that they make for themselves. But then Warner Brothers are doing an all-female cast now. Usually I would say, of course they are. This seems to be the trend now, whether it be Ghostbusters, whatever it is, always has to be a female cast for everything. But if I think about it, like, you can still tell the same story. Like, the gender really doesn't matter. The fascinating thing of the book comes from the sort of pecking order that's established between the kids and how they interact and how they essentially create this new world for themselves. That's the interesting part of the story. So just the fact that you're gender flipping it, I really necessarily don't have a problem with that. I'm sure they're going to keep all the same characters, or at least the same character traits, because I think Lord of the Flies is a story that you can't deviate too much from, because it's just, in my opinion, it's a perfect story. How it's written, how everyone interacts, keep that framework. If you're just gender flipping it, then in this case, I don't have a problem with it, because the story is going to remain the same. It's just going to be the characters, essentially. Some of their interactions might be slightly different, because you are changing the gender. But I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a new take. It'll be a new spin on the film. But as I said, I don't know any of the directors' work before. So maybe I could see what Maisie knew or B season and hate it and be really worried for this new adaptation of Lord of the Flies. But as it stands, I'm going to keep an open mind. I'm going to wait for trailers. If they keep it to the same tone as the book, and I think even as the first film, as I say, I've never seen the original film. I think there were 2 films that were made, actually. But from what I've seen from clips and everything, if they keep it to that tone, if they keep it very visceral and very hard-hitting and stark, then I think it could be onto a good film. Moving on to other news, Top Gun 2 gets a new writer with Eric Warren Singer, who has apparently worked on American Hustle. Get used to me saying this. Believe me, I do watch movies, folks, but I haven't seen American Hustle. I own it on DVD. I haven't got around to watching it yet, so again, I can't comment on his writing. He's apparently reworking the script originally penned by Justin Marks. And despite Tom Cruise's accident on the set of Mission Impossible 6, which we reported on last week, I think he broke his ankle, the release date of June 12th, 2019 still currently stands. I've given my opinions on Top Gun 2 before. I really don't want it to happen. It just seems like the current trend of Hollywood at the moment is remake every single thing you can from the 80s or the 90s. And unfortunately, Top Gun is another one that's fallen to the wayside with that. Top Gun really doesn't need a sequel. It's an absolute product of its time. It is undoubtedly one of the most 80s movies you could ever watch, from the soundtrack to the aesthetic to the machismo. It's all there. And I think you're going to lose that with Top Gun 2. I've heard rumors. I think even Tom Cruise said that they want to stick with the 80s vibe to it, which I really hope is the case. But I think, if anything, it might be a fine modern action movie. As a Top Gun film, it's kind of ruining a legacy for me. You really don't need a sequel. But I guess I'll wait for trailers, and I'm sure the trailers are going to come out, and you're going to have everything shot at sunset. You're going to have the jets again. You might have modern jets. They might even play Highway to the Danger Zone in the trailer. And I'm sure that will get me hyped from nostalgia reasons alone. But as it stands, I really don't care about Top Gun 2 at all. The first look of Evangeline Lilly as the character of the Wasp in the upcoming Marvel film Ant-Man and the Wasp has been released. We have seen the costume before in the post-credit scene of Ant-Man. We see the Wasp costume behind a glass case, but we finally see Evangeline Lilly in the costume. She hasn't got the full mask on, and it doesn't look like she's got the wings, but she's got the leather jumpsuit on. Evangeline Lilly can kick absolute ass. She is a fantastic actress. I'm most familiar with her from Lost, which is one of my favorite TV shows. In fact, it might be my favorite TV show ever made, with exception to season 6. If there's any Lost fans out there, you know what I'm talking about. And although I didn't like her character in The Hobbit, I thought with the material she had to work with, she was fantastic. She can do those actions. She can do the action scenes. She can do the emotional scenes. She's kind of the whole package when it comes to an actress. And I'm looking forward to seeing her play the Wasp in Marvel, introducing her to the MCU. We saw her as, oh God, what was the character called? Was it Hope? Was it Diana Hope? Oh God, I don't know my Ant-Man all that much. I haven't read any Ant-Man comics, and I've only seen the film a couple of times. But in terms of a picture, it's not like an action shot or anything like that. It looks like she's in the mansion. It looks like it's just going to be, you know, a regular expositional scene. But man, she rocks that leather jumpsuit, and that's pretty much all I can say on that. Moving on, we have Ed Skrein, who is most famous for playing Francis in the Deadpool film, or the original Dario Naharis in Game of Thrones Series 3. He was cast in the upcoming Hellboy reboot. He is no longer in the upcoming Hellboy reboot. He has exited the cast based on everyone. I don't know if he was receiving abuse, but basically the character he was playing is called Major Ben Damio. Now, I know nothing about Hellboy. I've never read any of the Dark Horse Hellboy comics. My only knowledge of Hellboy has been from Guillermo del Toro's 2 films, and it's been years since I've watched those. I believe this was a character that didn't even feature in those films. The character in the comic books is of Asian descent, and apparently there was a lot of sort of like turmoil on Instagram and Twitter, I think, sort of like put on Ed Skrein, saying, why are they casting a white guy for what should be an Asian role? And based on all that, he has exited the cast. He did a long post about it saying that he stands by the decision. He realizes that, you know, the fact that minorities need to be cast more in films, and the whole whitewashing concept is rife in Hollywood, and he doesn't want any part of it, so he's dropped out of the cast, and they'll be looking for someone else. Apparently, he said when he signed on to the character, he knew nothing about the character from the comic book. It was only until people reached out to him, whether it was, you know, from hate mail or whatever they were saying about whitewashing, that he then looked at the character and realized. So not very good research on the character, I would think. But then again, I know loads of actors, whether it be a comic book or a novel, sometimes they don't read the source material. They want to bring their own spin to it once they receive the script. If they now do go with an actor of Asian descent, then I'm fine with that, because obviously the concept of whitewashing does really annoy me. And just to get it closer to the characters, you know, from the character from the comic book, just in terms of doing that, making it closer to the source material is always a good thing for me. Moving on to the next bit of news, sticking with Hellboy with this one, Penelope Mitchell has been added to the cast of Hellboy as the role of Gnida the Witch, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. As I said, I know nothing about the Hellboy comics. She's an actress that has apparently appeared in Hemlock Grove and Between Worlds, their TV shows. I haven't seen those at all. That's real. I don't know anything about the actress. I don't know anything about the character. Apparently, the character is a very minor role. Whether they're going to beef up her role for the film, I have no idea. Next bit of news. Jon Bernthal, famous for playing Shane in the first couple of series of Walking Dead and The Punisher in the recent Marvel Netflix series, has joined the cast alongside Ryan Gosling, Kyle Chandler, and Jason Clarke for Damien Chazelle's Neil Armstrong biopic, The First Man, which is coming out in October 12th, 2018. I'm a massive fan of Chazelle's work. I love Whiplash, and George, if you have made it this far, I too, like Tate, do like La La Land as well. I went to see La La Land about 5 times at the cinema. I have it on Blu-ray, but granted, since then, I haven't watched it again. But this feels like a very different film that he's taking on. The first 2 films were very much tied to jazz music, and you can tell that Chazelle's love of jazz just sort of burnt through into those films. This is going to be a biopic on Neil Armstrong, very different film. Incredible cast so far, and Jon Bernthal is just a solid actor in pretty much everything I've seen him in. He brings an intensity to it. I don't know who he's going to be playing in this film. But maybe we'll see a different side to his performance in this one. But based on the director and based on the cast so far, I think this is definitely going to get some Oscar hype, especially coming around October time. You know, around October, entering the winter months, that's when you really get that push for Oscar films. So I think they'll definitely be pushing for that. And our last bit of news tonight, as I said, we're cutting out a few segments tonight. Trailer talk's gone, box office breakdown's gone. The last bit of news is that Lily Collins has joined Nicholas Hoult in an upcoming J.R.R. Tolkien biopic. Now, when I was researching for news topics to discuss for the movie news tonight, I did not know this was a thing. Apparently, this has been confirmed quite a while back that this is happening. I guess I missed the memo on this one because J.R.R. Tolkien, well, Lord of the Rings in general are my favorite films of all time. I'm currently reading a book. I love the Hobbit book as well. J.R.R. Tolkien, to me, is one of the best minds out there. He's an absolute genius for creating the world of Middle Earth, and it's such a rich lore as well. It's an actual like universe he's created, really complex. All the languages, all the races, all the provinces, the maps, everything like that. The guy's a genius to me. Apparently, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child actor Anthony Boyle has also joined the film. Apparently, he plays Scorpius Malfoy in the stage show of The Cursed Child. The film is being directed by Dome Karolkowski. I have no idea who that is. Sorry, guys. And Lily Collins will be playing Edith Bratt, who was Tolkien's great love and eventual wife, and has been seen in films such as Marty Knox's To the Bone and June Ho Bong's Okja, which is a film that's on Netflix. Apparently, both of these films are on Netflix. I still need to see Okja because I know that that got a huge... it's kind of got a cult following right now. Like, I've seen unanimously positive things about that film, so I'll definitely check that out at some point. And this is taken now directly from the Hollywood Reporter. They kind of outline what the film is going to be about. We know what it's going to be about. It's going to be about Tolkien's life. But Tolkien, written by David Gleason and Stephen Beresford, explores the life of the novelist as he finds love, friendship, and artistic inspiration among a group of fellow outcasts. When the horrors of World War I envelop Tolkien's life, they threaten to tear his fellowship apart, and he questions the very meaning and purpose of his art. Instead, he finds a way to use these experiences as inspiration for his famous works, among them The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. This could be epic. Just like his novels alone, this film could be epic. And I really hope it's done with care. I hope it's done with passion, and I hope they're not afraid to go into the dark realms of his life. Like, they just mentioned World War One. I hope we see that. I hope we see elements of that. For example, the new Goodbye Christopher Robin film, for example, that's going to delve into his PTSD. A.A. Milne, writer of Winnie the Pooh, and how he can take something so bad that happened to in his life and channel it into a creative way, a way to inspire people, a way to bring happiness back to people. I can't wait for that movie. I hope they do something similar with this as well, because for any Tolkien scholars out there, if you've read Lord of the Rings, if you read into the sort of behind the scenes of it as he was crafting the book, although Tolkien went on record and said that he didn't believe in allegory or the concept of taking something from your own personal life or reading the novel and finding elements of it that you could tie to his personal life, he didn't believe in that. He just saw them as stories. But there are a lot of elements to them, at least to me when I read them, where you can see where he would have drew inspiration from things in his own life and put it into his novels. That's been taught to death by Tolkien scholars out there. If you've got the Lord of the Rings 4-disc edition, they pretty much cover all that on the behind-the-scenes footage as well. I'm really looking forward to it. And Nicholas Hoult, of course, is more than likely going to be playing Tolkien. I don't know if that's officially been confirmed, but he was the first one to be cast. I can only assume at this point he's been cast as Tolkien himself. Nicholas Hoult's a fantastic actor, so I think this could shape up to be a truly fantastic film. And I'm really looking forward to seeing more of sort of the life of Tolkien himself. They might take some artistic liberties and things like that, but I do hope they keep it as close as possible. And if they do, I'm sure it'll be an absolute fantastic watch. Might even get some Oscar buzz, who knows. But yeah, so that's really it for the week in movie news this week. It's been a very slow news week. Apologies if this has felt a little stilted. This was a very last minute thing today. I was trying to find someone who could join me on the call today, so I could have someone to bounce off of. Unfortunately, I didn't have that luxury, so I'll pretty much just wrap it up here. Thank you for everyone that's watched tonight. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Any of the news articles that I've talked about this week, are there any other news articles that I didn't mention this week? Anything you like regarding the week in movie news, please do drop us a comment. In terms of what's coming up, there'll be more trailer reactions from me. I am fairly busy this weekend, but I'm very conscious that I have quite a lot of trailer reactions to get through. So I will be getting on those tomorrow, so expect those out within the next few days into next week. We're also getting back into movie reviews. Me, Tate, and maybe George. More than likely just me and Tate will be on a review for Detroit in the next couple of days. as well as a final epilogue video for all of our Game of Thrones reviews. We're going to be speculating on what we think is going to happen in the final series of Game of Thrones Season 8. So if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Be sure to watch our previous reviews on every episode of this current series that's just finished. That'll do it for me tonight, guys. And until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.